first of all, it's always interesting, Jimbo, because it's like once things come to light, you kind of look back and you go, we should have kind of seen this one coming.
Yeah.
I mean, with the wiping of the social media, the the no practice stuff with him and Lamar. I mean, is this something we should have probably seen?
Yes and no, though. Like, I don't think that Hollywood did a good job of doing what Orlando Brown should have done, and just kept it private. Like, yeah, he scraped the social media, but he didn't actively tweet about the issue and things of that nature. And I'll also say, and because of that, a lot of people think that his tweet right after he got traded was a knock on the Ravens, where he said, "Shout out to those who really keep their word." Mm-hmm. I think it was a compliment to one Eric DaCosta, saying, "Look, this is what I wanted. He obliged what I wanted. It was a win-win for him and the team, and I appreciate that." Right? So I think that's what it really was. But I mean, so to answer your question, yes and no, Glenn. We should have seen it coming because there was obviously signs of him being disgruntled. But at the same time, it wasn't super clear what was going on. I thought it had more to do with the contract.
Yeah.
Than it did with, him not wanting to be on the team anymore, which I think also might have to do with the money as well. Like, let's be honest, right?
I mean, how could it not be? I mean, my only thing is when he talked about the offense isn't for him and he wasn't happy. And you're right. The Ravens did an excellent job. I mean, they couldn't have traded him I bet if he could have handpicked any place to go, he would have picked Arizona if Hollywood had his choice. So
yeah.
I think it was an absolute win-win. Then you get the number 23 pick back in return is unreal. Now, of course, it comes out later on that obviously the Hopkins suspension was looming, and I think that the Cardinals knew that, and the Ravens may have even known that, and that's why it drove the price up and made them more desperate to pull the trigger. But my whole thing about Hollywood.
And Glenn, sorry, really quickly, the one thing you mentioned before that you're not mentioning is that they're in a situation with their quarterback much different than us.
Yeah.
Where he is not begging, he's demanding a deal. And they're doing everything they can to make him happy without just outright giving him a deal. So I think that's another thing, right? Like, him and Hollywood have history. They played together in college, and he's an excellent weapon for Kyler Murray. So that's another piece of it. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that because I think it's important as well.
No, you're 100% right. And then and the thing that kind of gets me a little confused is it seems like he wants more targets, but he was top 10 in the league in targets, total targets, as well as targets per game. He was top 10. So while at least in the initial part of the season, some people say, well, with Hopkins out, he's certainly going to get his target load, but maybe not, in that he will now be getting the focus and the attention of the defense. Whereas if Hopkins is there, then he's likely going to be getting, a number 2 corner with not as much help because they're going to be busy double teaming DeAndre Hopkins. So I guess at this point, good, good for you. Good luck. I hope everything goes well, except for when you play the Ravens.
Right.
But not really sure. To me, he kind of seems like a bit of a selfish guy when he's all worried about himself. He's not worried about everything in that press conference it wasn't right for me. And it just seems like he came off as a bit selfish when he was top 10 in the league in targets. What more could you really want?
Yeah, and actually I wanted to expound on that point because you mentioned it. He's looking for more targets. He was already top 10 in the league. But I also, one of the things that he mentioned that I was telling in the interview was that, it wasn't, and he said in college I got less targets than I did with the Ravens, but I had bigger numbers, right? Like but he had longer yards per catch and more touchdowns and big plays and things like that. The one thing that Hollywood has to understand is that this isn't the Big 12 anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, where they don't believe in defense.
Yeah, where you're running 3 all the time.
Right. It's not going to be a shootout 54-49 every Saturday. That's number one. Number two, so that's going to be interesting because, like you said, it's not really all about the volume, but it's about his usage. So, and then about getting the ball when it's there. So at what point does Lamar say, okay, Hollywood, I understand that you're upset about the way you're being utilized, but Lamar has to think in his own mind, maybe even if it's just in his own mind, that like a little bit has to do with him thinking that I'm not getting him the ball in the best situations for him, or like he's open and just not getting it. I think a little bit of that has to, so I'd be interested to know, maybe the relationship wasn't strained. I don't know. Right. But there's a lot of layers to it. But at the end of the day, if you take the names away from it, Glenn, take Hollywood off of it and just say this. The Ravens drafted a wide receiver, 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Never made a Pro Bowl, had 1,000-yard season. We flipped him instead of paying him. He's malcontent. We flipped him for another first-round pick.
Yeah, a better first-round pick because he went 25. We got a 23rd for him.
Right. So a higher first-round pick than he was drafted at for a guy that never made the Pro Bowl and was a 1-year 1,000-yard.
And let's be honest, receiver. The Ravens were never going to give him 25 to 30 million a year after his 5th-year option was expired anyway. So, yeah, I mean, shout out. It was a win-win. The Cardinals needed him for many reasons, including just to appease their quarterback. But the Ravens were able to get excellent value in return and address a position that I know some people were kind of saying they didn't have necessarily a need at center with McCary and Tristan Colon, but to me it was an absolute need because now McCary can go back to being the Swiss Army knife and be the insurance policy for Ronnie Stanley at left tackle.
Absolutely. Well, before we move on from this subject, the other thing I want to talk about, which I think is important, is if we take a step back and look at we'll focus on the wide receiver market. The NFL in general, players seem to be demanding more and being able to decide, use the leverage that they have to decide where they want to play. Like, look at the quarterbacks move around, look at the wide receivers. Hollywood and A.J. Brown both traded on draft night. So, but I want to talk about the wide receiver group. These guys are getting paid more and more and more. For a while, D-Hop was the highest paid non-quarterback, right? Offensive non-quarterback or whatever. And we're talking about 25, 27, in some cases getting up to $30 million a year. So the percentage of money dedicated to wide receivers is going up. Do you think that this is a sustainable thing, or is this one of the things where, like, back in the day, the running back was always taken first in the draft, and now running backs are taken at the middle tail end of the draft? Every once in a while, you get a guy in the first round. Do you think it's like, the game to me seems cyclical in a certain way, right? Like, where not everything is high value except quarterback for the most part.
Yeah.
So what's your take on the wide receiver market right now? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, the question is, does it continue in this direction?
Yeah, like, I don't think it's sustainable. Exploding? You know what I mean?
I don't think so either, but at the same time, with the cap growing each year, in 5 years, is 30 million even that impactful if you're getting a player of the caliber and quality that some of these guys are.
But when we're talking about percentage, right? The cap's got to go up because to me, the percentage of the cap allocation, it's right now it's swung too much in one way, right?
I agree. Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be awfully challenging to have both on the team at the same time. One of these highly paid wide receivers as well as a highly paid franchise quarterback. I don't know how. You may have to make a choice, one or the other, or let your defense
look at what the
suffer.
Chiefs just had to do.
Exactly. They had to get. You think they wanted to get rid of Tyreek Hill?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's an absolute stud. He's the type of guy that changed the league. He's a guy that everyone was chasing to try and get another guy like him. So. Yeah, I have my doubts on whether it's sustainable. I think that the big thing is what's his name from Green Bay who just went to the Raiders, the receiver.
Oh,
why am I blanking?
Adams.
Yeah,
DeVante Adams.
If DeVante Adams, it looks like the same DeVante Adams we've seen in Green Bay and shows out, and Tyreek Hill again does the same thing opposite Waddle with Tua throwing the ball. If he shows out, then maybe it continues to go on. But if we see a massive drop in production from Adams and we see, maybe even Tyreek Hill kind of playing second fiddle behind Waddle, then maybe we start to see some teams hesitant to throw that kind of change around. Because you're right, that's $30 million for a receiver in a league where it seems like every year is a deep receiving class because of all the 7-on-7s, the flag footballs that's taken over youth sports. It just seems like every year there's a new batch of talented, big, fast receivers that it almost doesn't make a ton of sense to pay these guys.
Yeah, this isn't a super chat, but we'll allow him to put his comment up on the screen.
That's nice
here.
of you.
Do you think the Ravens are in the camp that's willing to pay a top wide receiver?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Not with this current offense. Maybe if they switch to a more spread you out offense and didn't rely so heavily on the run, and maybe, but not with this all. I think to me, they've already made their choice, and that's paying the tight end who dominates the middle of the field. I think that's kind of their focus, is dominating the middle of the field. Now, if they find a big, strong receiver who can, get separation, who can high point a ball, who can get yak yards, then maybe. But right now, it seems like the focus is either on the tight end position or the tight end / receiver, like they've gotten in Isaiah Likely.
Yeah. He's, and I'm excited. We're going to talk about him because in the post draft presser, they talked about him for an extensive period of time. So I'm excited to get into that. But yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that they're there. But the other, okay, before we move off this topic, one of the questions you asked me the other day was, how will this affect the Ravens in the long term? Will the Ravens get some sort of a stain or an asterisk?
Will this be the Browns effect? Like the media saying, don't go to the Browns. Their history, or they're the factory of sadness. They're trash. And that's why no free agents go there unless they overpay. Is this something, if they stick with Roman, that we could see becoming an issue for the Ravens attracting offensive players?
Specifically, I think wide receivers, right?
Pass catchers, yeah.
That's a really tough one for me because
how long is Roman going to be here is a big question.
Big question, right? That's obviously a big question. But I think at the end of the day, the answer is no. If anyone is smart enough to simply look at Hollywood's numbers, like you said, top 10 in targets, right? We'll see what Bateman does this year. Obviously, Mark Andrews has had massive seasons under Coach Roman. So I would say right now, no. While I can also understand the argument for the other side, right now, no. If this trend continues, then I can see that. But I think that Hollywood Brown, he's always had a sense of, I don't want to put words in a guy's mouth, but I've perceived it as a bit of entitlement since he's been in the league. Like, I deserve this, I deserve that. I'm a first round pick. This, that, me. Like you kind of mentioned, him being a little bit of a me guy. And it's never, even in his best moments as a Raven, it didn't shake off. Like, it was still there. Look, he's had some big moments. I mean, we've been on here, defended him, what he's done. But I don't know. I don't like the I don't get the ball in the right way type of thing. It's like, well, how about, if you got the ball short, how about you make a guy miss and turn it into a long play like we see a lot of the great receivers doing? How about, just because you're not catching a deep ball, which, by the way, you dropped 3 guaranteed touchdowns in the Detroit game, which certainly would have helped his numbers. But even if you're not getting the ball in an ideal scenario for you, make the best of it. Make a guy miss, turn up field. I mean, just think of this. He got more targets per game and total than DK Metcalf. He got 2 more targets a game on average than Jamar Chase got. I mean, this is a guy who got more targets than Debo, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, T. Higgins. I mean, you can just go down the line of talented big name. A.J. Brown, Amari Cooper. I mean, you name it, he's pretty much out-targeted him. So, I don't know. I didn't want to get back into, I'm just frustrated by, the situation here. And I just hope it doesn't hurt the Ravens from attracting guys in the future. Michael says, we don't need a crazy number one receiver. In 2019, our number one receiver got 550 yards. We need efficiency. And I tend to agree with that. I think that's what matters most is getting points on the board and catching the ball when it's thrown your way. But you need talent as well. Yeah, absolutely. And to me, a first rounder complaining about lack of opportunity is just ridiculous. Period. Right? Like, I know they're different positions, and I know that I have a bias towards him because he's my favorite Raven right now. But when was Gus Edwards ever put in a situation to be the most successful ever?
Right.
When things didn't show up for him the way that they were made to, his talent is what showed on the screen. It was very clear. His talent, his hard work, his discipline, all these things turned small opportunities into him kicking down the door and obviously getting the paycheck that he got, which, Hollywood wants much more, and that's fine. Point is that he's done everything he can to maximize his value. Hollywood should take a lesson out of the old Gus Edwards book.
Yeah, and Michael's 100% right. They had the number one remember this, everyone. They had the number one offense in all of football, and it wasn't even close. By far the best offense in football.
Yeah, lap in the field.
Unanimous MVP, the guy who led the NFL in touchdown passes as well as touchdown passes from the pocket. And he was sitting, at least 4 fourth quarters and some halves of the third quarter. And Michael's right. Hollywood was our leading receiver that year. He had 580 yards receiving, and we had all that to go with it. So For everyone saying we need this, we need that, the other teams may, because that's how they're set up. But here in Baltimore, they can do things a little different and still have great results. Everyone wants us to spread it out and all this. Well, we know that with this offense, with the worst receiving core in the league, we can have the number one offense in football and the unanimous MVP. Do we know that for sure about any other offense, being brought here to Baltimore? The answer is no, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do want to give a shout out to a well-known commenter here in the chat here. While he's not providing a super chat, we will forgive him this time. Robert Pierney said, should we go after Ty Hilton? Interesting thought. My answer to that is simply, one, can he stay healthy? And I have big concerns there. Two, they were in talks last year and he turned us down. So I don't know if the Ravens are going to go back then and bark up that, bark up that tree. So I don't think it happens. I don't know if it's a fit, and I don't know if he'd want to play anywhere but Indianapolis at this point.
Yeah, and they just got Matt Ryan, so I'm sure he'd be happier there. I do think free agent receivers are going to have a hard time coming here unless they're overpaid, and we know the Ravens won't overpay. And I think a lot of that's kind of unfair. Rashawn Jones says he also had the audacity to say we only used him at the end to win us games. Andrew was more clutch than Brown, in my opinion. 100%. I mean, that's the part that rubbed me the wrong way. The exit comments, I disagree with him. I mean, I don't understand what he was getting at. The Ravens looked at, obviously he was unhappy. Apparently it's coming out that he was unhappy after year 2 in Baltimore, and they made a concerted effort to get this guy the ball in so many different ways. They tried to throw it over the top. They tried to get him the ball quick at the line of scrimmage. They even tried some handoffs, some jet sweeps and stuff like that. They tried to get him the ball in the intermediate. They tried to get this guy the ball in every way that they could, and he still wasn't happy. So, good riddance.
You know what this was, Glenn? This is a classic case of one of the partners trying everything they can to make their spouse happy, and they're just not with it anymore. So finally, the one that's been trying to make the other one happy says, all right, I'm done. You see the door? Yeah. Don't let it hit you with a good Lord split you, and I'm going to upgrade. All right, that's exactly, that's what it was. At the end of the day, Hollywood found excuse after reason after reason after reason to be content instead of watering the grass where his feet stood.
Mm-hmm.
Period. It's just what it was.
Yeah, 100% agree. Let's see here. We got Ravens O's Nation. I do think we could use a deep threat. Doesn't have to be an insane wide receiver. Going to be easier for teams to key on the run with no deep threat. And I think they will add to the room.
Yeah, I don't think it's finished.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's an opportunity to still add a different type of guy. I think they got their big guys with the tight ends that they drafted and with Mark Andrews still being here. And I think they got some young talent on the roster, but I think there's an opportunity for them to certainly add to the position, whether that's through trade, or I think there's some cuts coming along the way here around the league. And I think they certainly have an opportunity to add some. But let's not forget, Devin Duvernay can absolute run. He ran a 4.3 something 40. And he can still be your deep threat. And Bateman, don't sleep on his speed. I know a lot of people are saying, well, he's not the burner. He's got enough juice to get by defenders and get down the field. So, but yeah, I think there's opportunity to grow.
And if it's cool, I think maybe let's talk about that for a little bit. Like you mentioned, wanting to talk about different position groups and kind of what the Ravens can do to upgrade that group and things like that. Not sure how you envision transition into that, but I have a list of available wide receivers right now.
Okay.
And we can talk about, the Ravens, who those that are available that could be a good fit for the Ravens. I think there's some intriguing names on here. Now, one that's been viral with the Ravens, of course, the past 2 years now, over 24 months, has been Julio Jones, which, we saw. Yeah, I don't want anything to do with that, in my opinion, because he can't stay healthy.
Plus, he's not the deep ball threat anymore.
Right. And yeah, he exactly. He's a shell of himself. Okay, hold on. We got another one coming in. I think this might be someone that Glenn. Here we go. Oh, Tommy boy. So we tried the wide receiver thing. It didn't work. We're going to go back to having 3 tight end sets dominating the middle of the field. Look, Tom Brady not Tom Brady. Who is it? Bill Belichick always talks about dominating the middle of the field.
Yeah, that's his most important thing, dominate the middle of the field.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm okay with it because people will say, oh, well, we're predictable. We're this, that, and the other. And that's fine. Like, true greatness is everyone knowing what you're going to do and you still being able to do it. You don't think people knew what we were going to do in 2019 when Lamar was in the pistol and he was going to run behind on 4th down in Seattle? You don't think they knew he was going to run behind Marshall Yanda?
Well, even if you know, there's obviously slight
right. There's
a team wants to attack the middle of the field. It's not like, oh, we know that, so we can stop it.
So we'll just eliminate it and not make it a thing anymore.
It's not that easy.
Right. So I agree here. I think we're going to see a lot more of going back to the true colors. So I agree with you, T.
Stay in the sweet zone. Stay in what Lamar does at such an elite level. That why not go towards his strengths rather than just trying to buoy up perceived weakness. Britt House says $2 for Devin Williams from Oregon, our undrafted free agents. Let's talk. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get into because some of these guys are interesting. So
well, let's table that just real quick.
We can come back. We'll circle back to it.
Britt, we will come right back to it, but I do want to get to this list. We talked about Julio Jones. Another name that's been around the Ravens for a while. I don't think stylistically is the best fit, but Jarvis Landry is another name that's out there. Will Fuller, T.Y. Hilton, Emmanuel Sanders, Allen Hurns, Deshaun Jackson. Those are the names to me that I think would make the most sense. D.D. Westbrook. I'm trying to look down this list here.
I mean, the only issue is how do you convince a guy to come here after at least the perception? I think it's an incorrect perception, but the perception is that it's not a wide receiver friendly offense. That's I think it's going to be a tough point for the Ravens, which I think might lead the Ravens to have to trade for a guy who's maybe unhappy or underperforming at another team in order to bring in some help.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's only a few ways I think the Ravens, because of the perception that they get a guy like I think Emmanuel Sanders would love to come here because there's a young group. Now, he's also not your burner. He's not your deep threat guy.
Yeah,
but he can teach the guys. Emmanuel Sanders, it can be a leader to that group. And I also think that he would love to come here because he wants to win. He doesn't care about numbers at this point, right? Like he can make crucial catches. He can fill in that like Anquan Bolden-esque role where like we know where the ball's going on a crucial play. It's going to Mark. It's going to Sanders. And that's okay, right? It's about the plays, not about the volume. I think that's one way you get a player here through like, hey, I want to win, and that's above all based on where you're at in your career. Or, of course, it's been injury riddled and he's on the market for a reason. I think specifically of a Will Fuller, right? He's been paid by Houston, then paid by the Dolphins, and now he's on the market again. So he's been paid well and never really been able to stay healthy. But when he's healthy, I mean, everyone takes him in fantasy and they love it or they hate it, right? They love it for 2 weeks, hate it for 6 weeks, love it for 2 weeks, hate it for 6, right?
Yep. Sounds right.
So I don't know. I mean, those are the two that come to my mind. I think
Deshaun Jackson's a possibility because he's just
so
straight.
He's
just such a burner, though. He's still got the top end speed.
Did you see him in Vegas though?
Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't be happy with any of those guys, honestly. I don't want any of them.
I think Sanders. You wouldn't want Emmanuel Sanders for the right price.
I don't think he fits a need here. Maybe if there's a rash of injuries, then you go out and grab him. But I think as long as everything stays currently how it is, I think you. I don't see what he fits. I think they're right. They need a burner. And they may have gotten one with some of these undrafted guys, which we're going to get
talk.
Don't get nervous because I'm here now.